Good day everyone, I am BlueBlaze, and thanks to the Australian Postal Service, I ended up receiving my physical copy of Sonic Frontiers early. I've played through roughly an hour of the game, at the time of this writing anyway, as I'm waiting for the Steam release to go any further. However, the time I have played has given me some impressions that I feel I should share on the channel. Please note, whilst I will not try to cover many, if any, story spoilers, I will be speaking about the spoilers in terms of the content. However, as this is mostly unscripted, it is quite possible I might accidentally speak about the story and spoilers for where I'm up to somewhat. In addition to trying to keep as many spoilers as possible out, I've decided not to use any footage from the game and have opted to use some Sonic Colors Ultimate recordings instead. With that being said, if you want to go into it completely blind, without any knowledge at all, probably best you don't watch this video, because there will be some little spoilers, if any. Anyway. However, with the spoiler warning out of the way, here is my first impressions regarding Sonic Frontiers. I think to start with, I'm going to go over some parts of the game that are mostly nitpicks. The thing that I first noticed when jumping into the game is some strange things about the cutscenes. The animation of the characters present in the cutscenes sometimes can feel really slow and static, which is interesting considering it's somehow a step down from Forces in my opinion with the animation, which was already feeling fairly slow and static. However, there are some times in the game that I have noticed thus far where the animation's extremely expressive. There's in the trailers for the game, there's one part where Sonic gets chucked into a wall, and in that part, for an example, during most of that scene is extremely expressive when he's jumping out of the way or getting picked up and thrown itself. When he hits the wall, his spines do not do what they should probably do. They just sit there like they're made out of concrete. They should probably splay is probably the best way they need to go. However, yeah, and that seems to be a running thing throughout the game by what I've seen thus far, where you have some animations that are extremely really nice, like in that sort of thing, and then others that are just like, they don't make sense at all. And another thing with the cutscene is Sonic's voice and the rest of the voice acting altogether, especially Sonic's voice. I'll go over everyone else's first. A lot of the voice acting seems fairly stoic in a sense, like not really stoic I guess, fairly like there's not much expressiveness to the voices themselves. Like the line deliveries are okay, however it feels like none of them are actually talking to each other. It just feels like they're just speaking and then the next character's speaking even though they're referring to each other in their speech, which is very interesting. Yeah, it doesn't seem right. And then Sonic's voice, because Roger's now playing it extremely deep compared to what Sonic would usually be. It is I can't say extremely again. It's very jarring. It seems very jarring, just hearing a really deep Sonic voice. And I'd imagine they did this because they needed to have Sonic be a little bit more expressive for this game. And Roger can't really do expressive by what I've seen thus far, just in Sonic's voice anyway. He can do expressive in other voices, including the one he's using now. However, it just seems really, really deep, and it just feels off whenever you hear him. Especially when he goes and says something like yo, and it comes out like yo. It doesn't sound like Sonic, and it is very strange to hear. Yeah, the next thing for my nitpicks is the controls. Nothing specifically bad about the controls, however, I am personally a fan of how Generation's controlled. Like, it's controlled really well in my opinion. And Frontiers has gone more of a fan gamey route kind of with it, where you hold right trigger to do the boost and all that sort of thing. It's very strange. You can't change your controls on the Xbox version at the least. I'm going to see when I get my Steam version. However, you can't change it on the Xbox version at least, and some buttons just don't make sense. Like, to do the Lightspeed dash, you have to press left stick down instead of pressing like Y, which is what it's always been and what it feels most comfortable to be. I find it difficult when running fast, per se. Like, I'll be using the left stick to move around, and then I'll have to push it down to try to do a Lightspeed dash, and it doesn't feel correct as such, personally. It is something that you can just get used to, and it'll play fine. It does play fine with it. However, I personally would prefer older control schemes. Yeah, as for how he controls himself, Sonic controls really well. Like, you can individually set every single type of his speed as well, like his turning speed, his boosting speeds, his just normal walking speeds. I think that's really cool. It's a good way to make it a lot less like Unleashed, where turning corners is one of the most difficult things ever. And yeah, I guess Sonic himself controls really well. I'm quite glad of how Sonic controls. The next thing up is probably the glitches and pop-in. Now, I'm not sure if there's going to be a day one patch. This video will come out after it actually does release, therefore there might be by the time this video comes out. However, I'm not sure if there's going to be a day one patch. There's some little glitches that I've noticed, like going on grind rails, sometimes it doesn't play an animation and he just stands on it and that sort of thing. There was a glitch on one of the cyberspace levels where I just went through the floor almost. Things like that. There are some glitches. It is perfectly playable, however. Like, these glitches do not break the game really in any way. There is like the one where I said it goes through the floor or anything like that. Luckily, because there's no live systems, it doesn't really matter too much. However, that was only a one-off as well. It didn't happen ever again. It was just that one time, and it will probably be fixed pretty soon, I imagine. However, other than that, no real game-breaking glitches or anything like that I've encountered thus far, or even when watching my siblings. And yeah, the glitches itself, they're okay. There are some there, as expected. It's Sonic. It's a Sonic game. However, it's pretty good. Pop-in? Pop-in is interesting. Because there are a lot of things that pop in. Specifically platforms and such. However, it is not terribly jarring. There is one instance that I found while my siblings were playing that there was some jarring pop-in where a pole half loaded in and then did not half load in until you got really close to it. That's probably about it. There are a lot of things that just pop in. However, they're not as jarring because it seems more like, to me it just feels like they're more loading in. However, that's just me anyway. Next thing up is Green Hill's back. We saw that in the trailers. The first stage is Green Hill. Spoiler alert for that, I guess, if you didn't expect it to be the first stage. Probably my biggest thing with the stages is it reuses a lot of the same stages multiple times thus far by what I've seen. Like, my siblings have played Green Hill 3 times, I think. Yeah, 3 times. One of my siblings has played 3 times already. And they've only played for the first, like... we haven't got off the first island yet. Like, it's... and if it has to replay multiple stages again... I'm personally not a fan of reusing stages multiple times over, especially ones that we've seen in the past, because the Frontiers version of Green Hill looks just like a better lighting version of Generations' version. Like, they've just gone and ported the assets over to the Hedgehog engine too, which they probably have. Good reuse of things. However, like, I'm personally not a fan of Green Hill anymore. I'm starting to get really frustrated with it. That's just me. Another thing is there are some fully 2D stages. Whether you like them or not, that's a thing. Personally, I'm not a fan of 2D stages in Sonic, unless it's like a classic game. That's just me. Some people may like them, some people are indifferent to them. It's your own thing, just saying there are some fully 2D stages. Yeah, I think that is currently it for the nitpicks, just from the first hour anyway, that I've played, and watching my siblings play for like a couple of hours to 4 hours or something like that. I don't know, somewhere around that. Anyway, that's about it for the nitpicks. With the nitpicks out of the way, here are some brief highlights of the game thus far for me. In levels, you can do extra missions, which is amazing. I love that idea, like to help replayability, where you can go through, say, level 1, you clear a mission, and then getting the red rings is clearing a mission, getting the S rank is clearing a mission, and then getting a certain amount of rings is clearing a mission, and then you get rewarded for each of those missions. That's pretty cool. I am a big fan of that. Adds more to the levels, personally. That's pretty good. The boost has been toned down in comparison to previous games, and I would say all previous games, because you cannot hurt enemies anymore, and it is slightly slower. I believe you can upgrade it, however it is slightly slower. Yeah, I'm really happy with that, actually, because it takes a lot of the, as people call it, boost to win elements out, because you can't just run through enemies with the boost anymore, which is nice. I'm a huge fan of that. The combat I have found thus far to be quite satisfying. Especially the animations, just attacking or battling an enemy has been really fun this far. Many of Sonic's old moves have returned, which I don't know whether they're ever taken away to start with, especially in Forces. Like the Lightspeed Dash is back, and it's back to being on any ring that you want it to be. Not like Generations where you have to use it on specific rings. That's just something I'm not a fan of personally. You've got the trick system. It's back. It's slightly different, however. You can just sort of do it whenever you want once you unlock the trick system. The drop dash is interesting because I actually haven't found a use for it yet. I think the biggest thing probably for it would be that, unlike the boost now, which you can't attack in while using a boost, maybe that's what the drop dash is for, because it's similar to a boost. It boosts you forward and you can still hit enemies. That's the only thing I can think it might be for. Not completely sure, however. The momentum in the game, it is somewhat limited. It's not like full momentum physics or anything like that. However, there is momentum. That's my main thing. Like, there is momentum. You boost up something, you go faster up it, you fly higher. Like, it's things like that. Just simple fun, boosting up something, jumping off, you go further than if you didn't. That's momentum. It's pretty good. You go up walls, you slow down. I'm happy with momentum. Rings have a purpose. I don't necessarily want to spoil it for anyone. However, you get enough rings and something happens. And there's just a fair number of things to do in the world thus far that I've seen, especially in just the tutorial section alone. Like, the tutorial took me an hour just because I was exploring and doing a bunch of different side little things and all that sort of thing. And then there's like side quests later and all that sort of thing. There's a lot of stuff to do in this game, and that makes me happy because I was really worried you're just going to run through it in 10 seconds flat and like be done. I'm really excited about that. Yeah. Okie dokie, there is my first impressions from playing roughly an hour of the game and watching my siblings play it as well. My overall verdict thus far is that I'm really enjoying where the game is going and the gameplay is fun. Hopefully, anyone who picks it up will enjoy it as much as I have been as well. However, for now, I believe that is all from me. I hope everyone enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, and I shall be back in the next one. Cheers everyone!